Good evening and welcome to the July 6, 2023 public hearing of the City of Highland Park Zoning Board of Appeals. Patrick, may we get a roll call when you're ready?
Member present.
Present.
Here. Here. Here.
Here. Thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the June 15th, 2023 meeting?
We have a council liaison, Ross. Referred to the project proposal.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you. You may need to speak into a microphone.
In the minutes it was referred to as a proposal, but we want the strict back present ready because the layout's already in
Okay,
there.
gotcha.
It's just a slight little change.
The wording, do you have the wording?
Yes, Commissioner, Councilmember Ross advised, visited the site, took a photograph. He noted that there isn't a lot of ground cover elsewhere. It is a flat area, is what she wants it to be changed to. The sentence is being changed from the proposal is a place in a flat area.
The reverse, right?
Okay, in order for us to accept it, we need the language. So if we could make it straight, please.
Yeah. Yes, so if there could just be a motion, so where Council Liaison Ross stated, Council Liaison Ross advised that she visited the site and took photographs. She noted that there isn't a lot of ground to cover elsewhere. It is in a flat area. We request a motion, staff requests a motion that be changed to, well, in a motion to adopt the minutes with this amended version, change it to Council Liaison Ross advised that she visited the site and took photographs. She noted that there isn't a lot of ground cover elsewhere either. The proposal is to place in a flat area.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes as amended and just stated correct. Liaison's request.
Is there a second?
Member back.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstention?
Member Hendrick will abstain.
So the minutes have passed by a vote of 5-0. That brings us to if there is any business from the public other than items that are on the agenda. I will note at this point that application 2023-VAR-012, the appellants are Andrew and Courtney Perlmutter. The property is 166 Cedar Avenue, have requested a continuance. So if anyone's interested in that, it will come at a later time.
Do we need to make a motion to continue?
We will do that
Okay,
when we get to
comes
that
up.
item on the agenda. We're just making that brings us to old business. We have before us 2023-VAR-009, the property at 343 Beach Street. The appellants are Lawrence and Carissa Coons. Patrick or Carl, do you have an update for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair. No presentation. This was considered 3 weeks ago at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. This item was continued today. The board asked for a revised approval order with conditions of approval. I zoomed in. This is just from the staff report. That's the little Roman numeral I and the little Roman numeral 4. Those two conditions are included in the packet. I did make this available to the applicant beforehand. They have not indicated objection to these conditions. These conditions were reviewed by other staff at the city as well, and I do not note any objections from other staff. And then the only other comment I will make, and I apologize because normally I do this in advance. Commissioner or Board Member Hendrick, you were absent at that meeting. You have to certify on the record you reviewed the video to vote on this.
Don't worry, Carl. I was going to abstain.
Okay. And I normally I do that in advance, but I just want it still, everything on the record, transparent.
I read through the packet and I was prepared to abstain.
Okay. Those are the only comments I have for this, unless there are questions. The application is the same. It's the same everything before the board except for these two new conditions in the approval order.
Member Beck?
Did I hear you correctly when you said you had not provided this to the applicant?
I did indeed provide this
I did that correctly.
in advance. I did indeed provide this in advance, and the applicant did not indicate any objections to these conditions of approval.
We put it on the record. Yep. Do you accept
Well,
the order?
I was going to ask that of her.
I think that's a good idea.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Sharon,
I
are you
was-
feeling that we're not letting you do your job?
The vice chair is being a little anxious.
Just trying to keep things moving.
Yes. Carissa, would you like to step to the podium, please? And because this is a continuation, you are still under oath. Do you have any objections to small Roman numeral 3 and small Roman numeral 4?
No objection.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any. I will begin with the vice chair.
I would approve this with the revisions that we request the motion.
We're going to go down the line quickly.
Oh, okay.
Member Trishansky.
I would vote to approve it.
Member Beck.
I would vote to approve.
Member Zoransky.
I too would vote to approve.
And Member Hendrick.
If I had watched the video, I would probably vote to approve too.
And I will be behind this as well. I want to thank you for accepting these changes and hope your kids enjoy the playset. Council Member Ross, do you have any comments you'd like to?
No further.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank
for
you.
asking.
In that case, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve to adopt the approval order as amended.
Any seconds?
Member Trishansky will second.
Thank you. Patrick, when we get a chance, we'll take a roll call. You are in the hot seat, but I'm assuming that's the role you're playing tonight.
I am playing the role of house.
Yes.
Member Beck,
Aye.
Member Stransky.
Aye.
Hendrick,
Abstain.
Member Bay.
Aye.
Chair Collins.
Aye. Thank you. That is voted in favor 5-0 with one abstention. So it has been approved. You will hear from staff shortly, but it's already in place, so enjoy. Thank you. That brings us to new business this evening. The first item on our agenda is 2023-VAR-011. The property at 1808 Old Briar Road. The appellants are Brett and Drew Peer. Do we have a staff presentation?
Yes. Okay. So, 1808 Old Briar Road. The applicants are Brett Pear. The proposal is to put a fence in the 40-foot subdivision building line. The property is zone R6 and it's above the minimum lot size. The house was built in 1938 according to the county assessor. And so yes, they're requesting relief from the subdivision building. Here's just a map showing the zoning of it in the R6 next to R4, and you kind of notice that it's a through lot, which we'll look into the aerial. That's kind of the hardship in this case. The frontage is on Old Briar Road, which is the north, and the south Ridgely is where the subdivision building line is located. So the functional front of the property is on Old Briar, and kind of the functional rear is on Ridgely. The proposal is to put a 4-foot fence on the side of Ridgely, which has a subdivision building line, but it's a 4-foot fence, I'll note, so they're not requesting anything for height. It's only the encroachment on the subdivision building line. And then this is the subdivision plat for the property. This is very hard to see, but every house in this area has this subdivision building line. I have it zoomed in here, as you can kind of see. When it was platted, it was probably thought that the house would front on Ridgely, but when this house was built, it instead was fronted on Old Briar Road. So if kind of roles were reversed, we probably wouldn't be here because the functional rear would be on Old Briar and the functional front would be on Ridgely, but the house was built in reverse, so they're requesting to put a fence in the rear yard. These are just some applicant photos of the rear yard. The stone patio is from the property. I'll kind of go to the next one more. So how it'll fit into the property is it'll be the street, those two bushes, and then the fence will go behind it. So it'll kind of be more tucked away into the property, and those tree lines, it'll be a little bit more hidden. So it'll have some vegetation buffering from Ridgely. There's no other comments from, we didn't get any public comments. No other department has any comments on this project. And yeah, so it's for you to decide for the approval of encroaching the fence to encroach 40 feet on this building.
Thank you. Any questions for Patrick? Member Beck?
One thing, is, where's the zoned setback for that front yard there in relationship to the subdivision building line? That's usually helpful to see that on a layout of the map. Basic.
So the zoning, as you can see, is R6. R4 is abutting it, but it's the property is an R6, so it would.
So what I think Member Beck is asking is sometimes, like on a presentation, we have like lines drawn that show this is the subdivision line, this is the buildable area, or whatever the case might be.
If,
Is that right?
if there weren't a subdivision building line, where would they be allowed to put the fence?
It's a 4-foot fence, so you can put a 4-foot fence in your front yard. So they could have put it as proposed here.
The what year was the house built in?
1938.
1938. And what year was the subdivision building line?
1925.
Okay, so the house was built after. So even though it was situated backwards, it was after. Okay. Any other, Vice Chair Bay?
Just for clarification, even though this is fence case, we're not zoning variance.
Yes, because they're not asking for a height relief.
Thank you.
Might I make a comment?
Yes, Carl.
Can't help myself. I always quiet.
We could tie you into that chair, but you could still make a comment.
What we found most endearing about
Yeah, so this is one of those applications where it's this subdivision building line, which some properties in Highland Park have. Most don't. I mean, I don't know the exact number. Most properties in Highland Park do not have this type of restriction, but there's a good percentage that do. The fence meets all the quote-unquote regular zoning and city code requirements, and if that was just it, this would have gone through permit, and it would be up now, presumably already. But this property, and admittedly this specific neighborhood was the way it was platted, there were these building lines installed, and these building lines are restrictive and don't let structures higher than 12 inches encroach within them. And then, I mean, I think Patrick already pointed this out, but right, it doesn't have this restriction on the north side, but the way this home was built, you know, it's functionally facing the north, and its functional rear yard is on the south. But this block is interesting because the other homes on this block aren't quite the same like that, the way the actual homes are constructed. There might be one or two that match it, but most of them don't. Most of them actually, they point south towards Ridgely, and that is their functional front. Those are my own.
There was a reference in the packet towards the functional fronts. For the houses immediately to the east and the west, do you know which direction they point? If not, I'll ask the applicant.
Do you have just an aerial image of this that you can put up? Either in the present, yeah. So there, so, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, the one immediately abutting to the west and the east, they're both, you know, the south is their functional front, and their functional rears are the north. There are no building lines on the north for either of those lots.
I'll also note that 1831 has a fence in their corner part. They came in for a subdivision subdivision. They came in for an addition variance, and they also have a fence in that portion. I can't say for certain if it's in the subdivision, but most of their land is in the subdivision building line, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. We will ask the council member.
Should I wait and,
If you have a question for staff, you may now. Otherwise, we're going to ask the applicant to present.
yeah, I guess I have a question maybe of the applicant. Maybe
Then let's
here.
let the applicant give their testimony, and then
Thank you.
we'll call on you. You'd like to step up? You'll please provide your name and address for the record.
My name is Brett Pear, and my address is 1808 Old Briar Road.
Do you hereby affirm or attest that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, when we initially bought this house, we were told that we'd probably have to go through this process, and the sellers almost did it just before we moved in, but passed that along to us. And it's been a very seamless process thus far, and I would say, you know, we simply want to just kind of enclose our backyard. We have our first child on the way. We have a daughter due in September. We have a 2.5-year-old dog, and we always just envision kind of them playing in the backyard. And as we kind of abut to Ridgely, that was definitely a concern of ours, and just kind of the general safety for both the dog and our child. So, yeah, appreciate you taking the time to review this, and thank you.
Are there any questions for the applicant? No, not seeing any? Okay. Councilmember Ross.
My question has to do with, so I saw there's no rendering of the proposed fence, but there's a description of it in FenceWorks purchase order.
Yeah.
And there's just 2-inch gap between the 4-inch slats of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me, and I did note that there's a fence at the end of your block.
Yeah.
It just seems like there should be some transparency to the fence. That are we allowed to ask? I don't know. We're allowed to ask those 2 inches, 3 inches instead.
We could condition, but
We
he's not asking for a fence variation, so I
Doesn't
I
fall-
personally don't think it would be appropriate.
That would also be my impression, that we have not done that previously. You know, there are certain conditions that go with fences, especially when you're like abutting your neighbors. where you need to put the pretty side facing your neighbors and your ugly side facing your house. That's the best way to put it. You get the post, they get the flush side, if it's a stockade fence. And there are certain requirements like that that I believe are built into the code as far as the width between the boards.
But it just creates it's still a fence, it's still doing everything you need it to do, and are putting the 2-inch gaps in. It just makes it lighter and more transparent. It I think is more appropriate but it's just the design point that and I don't know if but it sounds like we don't have.
We
Not
have
we, I'm
we
not
have
on
not addressed those issues previously,
Okay.
as far as I know. Carl, would you
It
like to
sounds
chip
like-
in?
Sounds a little bit like she's trying to,
Space the boards out a little further.
pardon?
She's trying to space the boards out.
Right, but she's trying to invoke one of the standards and says that maybe it'll impair the adequacy. Am I correct? That's what you're trying to invoke here?
The goal, I think, at least from my standpoint, is just to make it nicer for the street as a whole, and still serve the purpose of
So that's
this
the next
homeowner.
standard. It will alter the essential character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, but it's not for me to vote on this, so.
I just have a question.
Yes, Member Trushansky?
Is the packet that's submitted, does that become part of the evidentiary record?
The plans that they presented.
Yeah, yeah.
do
Is
become-
the packet that includes the letter of situation and hardship, does that become part of the evidentiary record?
It's part of the record, but in this case, the spec sheet or bid sheet is not included as an exhibit in the order. What's included in the order as drafted by staff, because when we draft these things, it's a template. It's the base thing to start from. Of course, the board can always modify as the board sees necessary, but on the actual exhibit that's in the packet, it's the site plan, and then it indicates 4-foot wood fence for backyard. So that's what's actually in the approval order.
Yeah,
So it's in
let me be more
It's in
specific.
the record.
It's in the record, though, yes, but it's
Yeah.
not necessarily an enforceable part of the order. So if there are design elements that the board wants incorporated in the order, then the board could amend the approval order to just ask that also be as part of the order.
Okay, maybe I wasn't clear. As part of the packet that was submitted for today, there's the letter of situation and hardship that sets forth why all the criteria in section 150 is met. I guess my question is that letter that was submitted in the packet part of the evidentiary record, or for the sake of completeness, should the applicant go through all those specifications as to why this meets section 1? That's what
He's trying to get at, do I need to have him go through each of the variant steps?
It's a part of the record.
It's part of the record.
It's part of the record.
Okay.
So like normally when the chair asks for our opinion, I go, thank you for providing, I make reference
I
to
got
it
it.
that way.
And Chair, may I make a comment
Yes.
on the design of the fence?
Yes.
So I have two things to say about this, which are seemingly contradictory, but I think Member Beck hit it right on the head, the nail right on the head. So there are not design standards in the city's codes for fences for single-family uses, and the board primarily is not a design review type body. Having said that, if there are concerns that the standards of approval are not met, which is what Member Beck was echoing, then yes, the board can condition applications as long as they're related or have a nexus to the standards of approval. In other words, if the board were to say, well, we don't find that this type of fence, allows adequate air supply, then yes, the board could condition the approval to require a specific type of fence.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bay.
I would supplement what Carol says. In the absence of doing that, I'm of the opinion we shouldn't. That if they were, once they get the variance permanently, they can completely different. As long as it was fine with the fence standard, they would have the right to do whatever they want.
I would agree.
And as long as
I agree. Ask a question.
Yes. Member Hendrick.
Have you talked to your neighbors about the project?
Yep, we went around and got signatures from, I believe it was 7 of our neighbors, and almost accidentally got one. We misread it and almost got an additional one.
So no one was in opposition to
No
this
one was in
for-
opposition. Yeah, a great opportunity to meet.
Any other?
ask about
I'm not
style
finished this. I'm not.
planning.
No one raised any questions or concern.
No other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I will begin with Member Trushansky.
Sure. I think that all of the elements of Section 150 are met. I think the letter of situation and hardship that goes through each of the 8 elements is very sufficient. It lays out why all the elements are satisfied, so I'd be in favor.
Thank you. Member Beck.
I agree. There's clearly a hardship, with the through lot and the restrictive setback for the subdivision line. I think easy decision to be in favor.
Thank you.
I think all the standards.
Member Zuransky.
I agree. I don't have much to add. I do also feel the standards are met, and I will support.
Thank you. Member Hendrick.
I believe the standards have been met. Based off of the letter of hardship they provided, I think it's bizarre that they built your house like backwards, essentially, compared to the other ones. It's definitely a unique hardship that was created because of that. It doesn't sound like we're going to, but just for the record, I would not condition this on anything. And I think for me, although I hear what you're saying aesthetically about the more space, you're probably right about that. Because they have a dog and a child, probably keeping that closer together is probably important to them. So I would not condition this on anything. Like I said, it doesn't sound like we are. I would vote in favor. And
Thank you. Vice Chair Bay.
I support approving it.
Thank you. I would agree with my colleagues. I think you did a nice job in your letter explaining why you needed the variance and the desire to have a fence. I will tell you, have fun keeping, if you paint that fence white, have fun keeping it white. Paint every 2 years. The first year you have to let it wait for a year. Because I have lived this. I have. Council member.
For the record, I support the fence as well. I do, and actually, yes, again, I drove by, and the ground slope, so I just feel like it'll be pretty inobtrusive, and I just hope for a little more space, but I understand completely why.
And you can talk to your fence guy about that. See what he or she may think.
And whatever you're comfortable.
And with that, I will entertain a motion.
Member Hedrick would make a motion to adopt the order as presented in the packet.
For a second.
Member Trushansky will second.
If we could get a roll call vote, please.
Member Chansky?
Aye.
Beck?
Aye.
Chansky?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair Bay?
Aye. Thank you. It passes unanimously. Congratulations. Carl or Patrick will follow up with you either tomorrow or early next week. Thank you. Is there a staff report this evening?
Well,
We-
we want to.
No, but we do.
Oh, we need to continue the other item.
motion.
Sorry. Yes, I flipped my page too soon. That brings us to 2023-VAR-012, the property at 166 Cedar Avenue. The appellant are Andrew and Courtney Perlmutter. My understanding is we have a request for continuance. Is there a date certain on that?
Yeah. Their council, Albert, emailed me today saying that they would like to discuss as such. Discuss the above.
Thank you. In that case, I will entertain a motion. There's a second?
I'll second it.
That's a motion by Vice Chair Bay with a second by Member Zoransky to continue this until the 20th of July. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, it is hereby continued. Now that brings us to staff report. No staff report? What, Carl?
I have no staff.
You have no staff report either. Okay, great.
Nothing to report on, rather.
Anything miscellaneous? Anything from city council we need to know about? Great. In that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I bring up one thing?
Yes, that would be under miscellaneous.
Yeah. Only because you mentioned that you drove by, I will just say our corporation council has told us not to mention that or do that because it's not part of the record, not something we all expect.
But the difference is we're quasi judicial and she's a policy legislator.
Yeah, I know,
There's a
but
difference in her.
but she's bringing the facts
Yes.
into the case, so I don't necessarily agree with that. Yeah, but I would have made the
Will,
same comment.
That, it's an interesting, so you've talked to Corporation
Council has advised us
That
we can
I-
only consider the information that is presented here at the hearing or
Yeah.
in the packet as
So
part of
if
the
I
public
visit-
record, that we are not allowed to visit.
I would be
But-
of the opinion that you should not do it, even if it's technically allowed, because it's not a part of the open record. Like
So not mention that, I can do that, for sure, not mention that I drove by. I am going to bring it up with Corporation Council because it just doesn't make any sense to me that you're, discussing.
It
the-
goes to the
re-
fact that we are a judicial body. Okay, we do not make it, with rare exceptions, we do not make recommendations to city council. Our decisions get appealed based on the record to a court of law. And therefore, the only thing that is allowed to be considered is whether or not we've handled the hearing properly, not that we have gone out of our way to do our own research, because the applicant or the neighbors may not have that ability. But you're a legislator, you're a policymaker. You do play a different role.
And I want to do things as properly as possible. I'm brand new to this role, and I don't mean to, create any problems. I will talk with Corporation Council myself to better understand the reasoning, because on the face of it, it seems to me that making decisions without physically being able to see what what the homeowner, what the property owner is talking about, it impairs, in my view, it's a piece
And we can do that,
yeah.
but it has to be an official meeting, it has to be noticed.
Yeah, we could in theory do public notice and hold a meeting on site.
That was discussed at the last zoning board meeting, but what I'm saying is that I need to understand this better, but in the meantime, I will.
You are not the first member of city council to have this problem. I will be honest with you.
Yeah.
it's also about the rights of the applicant.
It's about the rights of the applicant and the rights of the neighbors.
Because they don't have notice to address what you are bringing up.
Yeah.
And in addition, we didn't get to see it for ourselves.
Right.
And so, yes, we can listen to your word, but maybe you went on a rainy day, or this case was more
You're saying it puts me at an advantage, you at a disadvantage. That, and I just think that it actually helps the applicant. I think it's more helpful to the applicant that we've seen what they're living with. But I think rather than taking more time like this, maybe I could talk to Corporation Counsel and just understand the thinking behind it.
I think the issue is we have to make our decision based upon what's contained within the evidentiary record.
That's right.
And going to the scene and conducting your own site inspection, you're taking information that you learned outside and bringing it in. So you're looking at information that isn't contained within the evidentiary record, which is not what you're supposed to do. I think that's why they don't.
And I'll be honest, the time we had, without going into the specifics of the case, an applicant before us who wanted to remove a dozen heritage trees approximately, I would have loved to have gone to the site as a group and held the meeting
I
on
know
site.
you would like to go.
To point which
yeah.
trees and, you know, but that's not our purview.
It's like if you're sitting on if you're sitting on a jury in a trial,
Right.
they tell you, listen to the evidence, whatever's presented to you, do not do your own research. Do not Google the people in the case, do not Google whatever the case is about. Only listen to the evidence that's presented, and in this particular hearing, the evidentiary record is the packet and the testimony that's up front.
The Corporation Council not to do it, just advise against. The reason is, as pretty much stated, it opens up the veritable can of one or two of us go out, don't. Pictures, phone could be subject to a freedom of information.
That's true, too.
I mean, there's just it makes our decisions that much more assailable as opposed to just this.
And then when you
I
bring it, when
actually
you bring it
thank
up
you for-
in the meeting,
Yeah.
you haven't been sworn in. So really,
That's true.
Yeah, but she's acting on behalf.
she's a non-voting member of the.
She's a non-voting.
liaison.
But it's like Carl putting his two cents.
That's scary.
We actually thank you for that advice, because I will not take,
Well, and we learned this in the training.
yeah.
And that is that if you are, and some of us are, I didn't use my electronics tonight, but if Jamie pulls up Google Earth on his laptop here to look at the property, and let's say it's a contentious issue, and they're like, what are you doing on your laptop? They can do a FOIA request for your
You're not
laptop
allowed
or your
to look
phone. You
at
can't.
any other thing
Because you don't know, you're not
in the pack.
texting each other.
If I'm looking at something that could impact the decision, like, so
Yeah.
yes.
The key-
it's discoverable.
The key that's been
Thank you
said
for
is,
this education.
in addition to the evidentiary record, which we have to make our decision on, if there were a contentious issue, the next step after us is district court. So the can of worm thing is exactly it. We wouldn't want to base our decision on something not in the record. It gets appealed, and that would be problematic in withstanding the appeal.
I, unlike you though, I am allowed to drive to cities
Yes.
without,
Yes.
without
Allowed
taking,
to, so
Well-
we've been strongly advised against it.
but I.
I'm just saying, when you say I drove by and I saw
Absolutely.
this,
Yeah,
I'm just saying, me as a member of the board,
yeah,
I just kind of ignore that information. So
Right.
I just, in the miscellaneous here, that's all I want to tell you.
The burden is squarely on the applicant. So whatever they need to, you know, to cover that burden, they should bring in, whether pictures, or testimony, and that's what becomes part of the record, and that's what makes our decision.
it runs counter to everything a designer would think.
And one of the
But-
things you said is you want to help the applicant.
Yeah,
What about the person who affected?
yeah.
All of a sudden,
Well, I
you're
would
going
think,
on the side of the applicant.
I would think it helps, you know, I was going to use the word, the truth, but there's, truth is subjective, but it helps just, either, it helps a good outcome for a fuller, you know, understanding of what.
Well, it does but depend on you. You're exactly right. I mean, I have the house I'm currently in. Previous owners put on a 2-story addition. The neighbor next door tells me that ugly thing. Well, that's her perspective.
Right,
You know, the fact that she used to have 12 more feet before the house in the yard, but didn't need a variance. It was totally allowable.
Or let me throw a hypothetical out to you. You go and visit the whole backyard in a fence case is lined with trees, and you think to yourself, it's not necessary for a fence because there's enough foliage to just solve this. And you say, I went to the house and I saw this. Well, maybe within the time period that you went to the house and they're here, they're like, yeah, we had to cut down all those trees. They're all gone. Things change.
Things change.
So again, I agree with May. Like, it's on the app to present the.
They have to prove to us that they met the standards for a variance. All the weight is on the app.
Yeah.
Here, may I state?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I mean,
No, and that's what I was trying to say about, going to the standards, because you were talking about, it looks nicer for the neighborhood, there's more air. But we really have to, particularly in this case, we weren't using fence standards, we were using the zoning standards. I guess I was just trying to lead you to that.
Yeah, thank you
See what you were thinking.
for trying to, giving an opportunity for a rationale that fits within how, this operates, the system operates. Anyway, this has been very helpful.
We're
I
very
will-
different than PDC.
And
Okay, I've sat in their meetings and had them debate color of brick. I'll be honest,
yeah,
and whether or not it's a pretty color of
That's why
brick.
design is in there.
Yes, exactly.
now, I mean, to the I still am going to talk to Corporation Counsel, but my understanding from the last meeting was that the recommendation was for this commissioners, not to even visit. And certainly it would have to be, a posted meeting or whatever, but that I, without bringing it into the meeting verbally, I can visit. Nobody sees an issue with
No.
visiting.
I remember, and with the design commission, I thought it was okay. They're not a.
Correct. They make recommendations to city council.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
big difference between us and them.
Yeah,
When the city council goes by sites all the time, that
They're policymakers. It's different. I mean, they went and stood on the Woolbright development there at Walnut and Oakwood.
right.
I just want that. I want one of them to stand in the middle of that intersection and not get hit.
They have to.
Because my wife gets almost hit once a week.
Anyway, I really appreciate the effort to educate me, and I accept all efforts to educate me.
Just surprised I understand it.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
It's kind of scary.
Kevin, the time that you had a field trip, was that,
I have not had a field trip. I wish we had on the golf course one where they were removing heritage.
yeah.
It would have been much easier to see.
The one we did last year.
Yeah, the one Bobolink Club. It would have been much easier to be on site as a group and
Yeah.
see which trees were being
Yeah,
removed.
You prefer to see that Bernie face to face instead of on Zoom? 18 hours of testimony?
Yes. In the dark.
Easy, we're still on the record.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Member Beck will make a motion to adjourn.
And a second?
You can have it.
So that was a motion by member Beck with a second by member Zoransky to adjourn at 8:16 PM. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, we are hereby adjourned.